My name is Jack Coleman, and this is the story of how my life was torn apart, only for me to rebuild it stronger than ever. I had everything a man could ask for. A successful career as a business consultant, a beautiful home in Greenwich, Connecticut, and a woman I believed was my soulmate. Emily and I had been married for 10 years. We met during our junior year at Columbia University, where I fell for her charm, her laughter, the way she could light up a room. She was an art history major with dreams of curating her own gallery someday, while I was grinding through economics and business courses on scholarship. Emily came from a well-off family, the kind that had summer homes in the Hamptons and winter retreats in Aspen. The Mercerians were old money, with generations of wealth passed down through careful investments and strategic marriages. I, on the other hand, had built everything from the ground up. My father was a factory worker in Pittsburgh who died when I was 16, leaving my mother to raise me and my two younger sisters on a teacher's salary. By the time I met Emily, I had worked 3 jobs to put myself through college and had started building a reputation as someone who could turn failing businesses around. I thought our love transcended money, status, or ambition. We were the perfect couple, the driven self-made man and the cultured, refined woman who brought art and beauty into his life. Our wedding was small but elegant, held in the garden of her parents' estate. I still remember the look on her father's face, a mixture of resignation and thinly veiled disapproval. To Richard Mercerian, I would always be an outsider, a climber, someone who had captured his daughter through ambition rather than breeding. "Just make sure she's happy," he had told me at the rehearsal dinner, clapping a hand on my shoulder a bit too firmly. "That's all that matters to us." I took those words to heart. 4 years, I worked tirelessly, building my consultancy firm from a one-man operation to a respected boutique agency with offices in New York and Chicago. I traveled constantly, flying from Los Angeles to Boston to secure deals, build my name, and provide the best life for us. I wanted to prove to Emily, and perhaps unconsciously to her family, that she had made the right choice. Our 5th anniversary was spent in Paris, where I surprised her with a private viewing at the Louvre. For our 7th, we sailed the Mediterranean on a chartered yacht. I bought her the art she loved, the jewelry she admired, the life I thought she deserved. When she mentioned wanting to open her own gallery, I immediately offered to finance it, to make her dreams come true just as she had made mine by choosing me. But somewhere along the way something shifted. The warmth in her eyes when I returned home from business trips grew dimmer. The passion in our embraces cooled. I chalked it up to the natural evolution of marriage, the comfortable domesticity that replaces the initial fire. I missed birthdays, anniversaries, and vacations, but I always made up for it, or so I thought. A last-minute trip to Milan, an unexpected piece of art for her collection, a weekend getaway when I could squeeze it in. I trusted her to understand. I trusted them all. But trust is a funny thing, it takes years to build and seconds to destroy. It was a rainy Thursday evening in late October when my world collapsed. The trees in Greenwich were shedding their leaves, creating a carpet of red and gold on our manicured lawn. I had just wrapped up an important meeting in Boston, a potential merger that could take my company to the next level, when my flight home was delayed due to the storm. Frustrated but eager to see Emily, I decided to drive back instead. The 3-hour journey gave me time to think about us, about how I'd been neglecting our relationship in pursuit of success. I made plans in my head, perhaps a second honeymoon, maybe even discussions about starting the family she'd been hinting at for years. It was late, around 11 p.m., when I pulled into our driveway. The sight of a black BMW parked outside gave me pause. I didn't recognize it, but that wasn't unusual. Emily often hosted gatherings for her art world friends or charity committees. The house was dimly lit except for the living room. As I stepped inside, shaking raindrops from my coat, the sound of laughter, her laughter, echoed through the hallway. I froze, my pulse hammering in my ears. Something was off. It wasn't the polite, social laughter she used at her events. It was intimate, almost musical, the kind I hadn't heard from her in months. I walked in and there they were. Emily, my wife, my everything, and Ryan Carter, my childhood friend, a man I had trusted with my life. She was curled up against him on our couch, her hand on his chest, his arm wrapped possessively around her shoulders. They were sharing a bottle of Chateau Margaux 1995, a wine I had been saving for a special occasion. The sheer normalcy of it, the ease with which they sat there, made my stomach churn. They weren't just having an affair. They were comfortable. This wasn't new. On the coffee table lay a stack of papers, investment proposals by the look of them. They had been planning something together, right under my nose. Emily's face paled when she saw me, her glass of wine freezing halfway to her lips. Ryan shifted uncomfortably but didn't even attempt an excuse. He met my gaze steadily, almost defiantly. Jack, it's not what it looks like, Emily stammered, setting down her glass and standing up. She smoothed her silk dress, the one I had bought her in Milan, and took a hesitant step toward me. I let out a dry laugh. Then what the hell is it? Silence. The truth was suffocating the air in the room. My hands trembled with rage, but I refused to break down in front of them. How long? My voice was dangerously calm. Jack. How long? She hesitated, exchanging a glance with Ryan. Then, barely above a whisper, over a year. I felt something inside me crack. A year. A whole damn year. While I was out grinding, building our future, she was here, destroying it. And Ryan? The man I had once called my brother? He couldn't even look me in the eye now. Ryan and I had grown up on the same street in Pittsburgh. We'd played baseball together, shared our first beers, dreamed about escaping our blue-collar futures. When I got into Columbia on scholarship, he'd been the first to congratulate me. When he landed a job at a prestigious Wall Street firm right out of business school, I'd celebrated with him. I had introduced him to Emily at our wedding. He was my best man. It just happened, Jack. Ryan finally spoke, standing up. We didn't plan it. Didn't plan it? I repeated, my voice rising. You're sitting in my house, drinking my wine, and you have the audacity to tell me you didn't plan it? You were never here. Emily suddenly burst out, tears streaming down her face. Do you know how many nights I spent alone? How many events I attended without a partner? While you were building your empire, I was right here, waiting for you to remember I existed. So that justifies betraying me with my best friend? I challenged. Ryan was here, she said softly, and the simple statement cut deeper than any knife could have. He listened. He saw me. The confrontation that followed was a blur of raised voices, shattered glass, and years of love crumbling into dust. I learned that they had been meeting regularly while I was away on business. That Emily's gallery, the one I had financed out of love, had become their rendezvous point. That they had been discussing investments together, with Ryan advising her on how to secure her financial future separate from mine. She didn't just betray me, she humiliated me. And the worst part? Her family knew. They had known all along. Daddy always said you were too focused on proving yourself. Emily spat during our argument. That you'd never have time for a real marriage. To them, Ryan, a Wall Street banker with old money connections, was a better choice. I was just a self-made man, an outsider who had never truly belonged in their world. The divorce papers arrived within weeks, served to me at my office in a final act of humiliation. Her lawyer was ruthless, her family's influence extensive. She got the house, the furniture, even some of my savings. She stripped me of everything, including the illusion that love was unconditional. As for Ryan, he left his firm to join Emily's father's investment company. The last I heard, they had moved into a penthouse in Manhattan. My replacement had been seamlessly installed, as if the decade I had spent loving Emily had been nothing but an inconvenient prelude to her real life. I moved into a one-bedroom apartment in Brooklyn. It was small, barely furnished, and suffocatingly quiet. The walls were thin enough that I could hear my neighbors arguing, making love, living their lives. At night, I lay awake, staring at the ceiling, replaying every moment of our life together, trying to pinpoint where I had failed. Had I loved her too much? Not enough. Had I been a fool to think that someone like her could ever truly love someone like me? Depression settled over me like a heavy blanket. I stopped answering calls, stopped showing up to meetings. My business suffered. Clients began to leave, concerned about my reliability. The man who once commanded boardrooms with confidence was now a ghost of himself. I started drinking too much, not in bars or clubs but alone in my apartment, nursing bottles of scotch while staring at old photos of Emily and me. I'd analyze her smile in each picture, wondering if she had been thinking of him even then. My assistant, Sarah, tried her best to keep the company afloat, rescheduling meetings and making excuses for my absence. But even her loyalty had its limits. "Jack, you need help," she told me one day after finding me asleep at my desk at 3 p.m, reeking of alcohol. "This isn't just about your business anymore. It's about your life." I fired her on the spot, then immediately regretted it. But my pride wouldn't let me call her back, apologize, admit that I was drowning. By the 6-month mark after the divorce, I had lost half my clients, most of my savings were gone, and I was behind on rent for both my apartment and the office space. The empire I had built was crumbling and I was doing nothing to stop it. One night, I found myself at a dingy bar in a part of Brooklyn I barely recognized, drowning in whiskey when a stranger sat down beside me. He was older, perhaps in his 60s, with sharp eyes and silver hair. He ordered a neat bourbon and sat in silence for a while. "You look like a man who's lost something important," he finally said, not looking at me. I laughed bitterly. "Everything. I lost everything." He nodded, taking a sip of his drink. "I've been there. Wife left me for my business partner 20 years ago. Took half my company with her." I turned to look at him, really look at him. He was well-dressed, his suit tailored and expensive, his demeanor calm and collected. Not the appearance of a broken man. "How did you?" I began, not even sure what I was asking. "Get over it?" He smiled slightly. "I didn't. Not right away. I spent a year feeling sorry for myself, just like you're doing now." His directness should have offended me, but instead, it cut through the fog I'd been living in. "She broke you," he continued. "Now you have two choices: stay broken or build yourself into someone even she wouldn't recognize." That night, I went home, stood in front of the mirror, and really looked at myself for the first time in months. My eyes were bloodshot, my face gaunt, my posture defeated. I didn't recognize the man staring back at me. "Enough," I whispered to my reflection. "Enough? Revenge? No. That would be too easy, too predictable. Emily and Ryan would expect me to lash out, to fight the divorce terms, to make a scene. That's what the old Jack Coleman would have done. Instead, I chose reinvention. The next morning, despite a pounding hangover, I dragged myself to a gym that had just opened a few blocks from my apartment. It was small and no frills, nothing like the exclusive fitness club I used to frequent in Greenwich, but it was open 24/7. I hit the gym every morning at 5 a.m., pushing my body past every limit. The physical pain became a welcome distraction from the emotional turmoil. I cut out alcohol completely, started eating clean, and within a month I could see the difference. My body was becoming leaner, stronger, more resilient. But physical transformation was just the beginning. I needed to rebuild my mind as well. I devoured books on psychology, finance, and leadership. I studied the failures and successes of others, analyzing what separated those who bounced back from those who remained defeated. I learned about stoicism, about focusing only on what I could control and letting go of the rest. During this time, I reached out to Sarah, my former assistant, and apologized. To my surprise, she agreed to come back, but on her terms, as a partner rather than an employee. It was a humbling moment, but it taught me an important lesson about valuing the people who stand by you. I revamped my business, taking on clients who saw my potential instead of my past. I stopped chasing the biggest names and the highest fees, and instead focused on businesses I genuinely believed in, startups with potential, companies with ethical practices, entrepreneurs who reminded me of myself before success had made me complacent. I stopped chasing validation and started chasing excellence. I developed a new consulting approach that emphasized sustainable growth over quick profits, believing that building something lasting was more important than making a fast buck. This philosophy resonated with a new kind of client: visionaries who wanted more than just financial advice. Financially, I had to start almost from scratch. The divorce had left me with minimal savings, and my period of self-destruction had depleted much of what remained. But in a way, this was liberating. I had nothing left to lose. I doubled down on investments, carefully studying the market, learning from past mistakes. I identified rising tech firms, AI-driven startups, and promising new enterprises that were still under the radar. I attended investment summits, pitched ideas, and networked aggressively. At one such summit in San Francisco, I met Marcus Wong, a brilliant programmer with an idea for a fintech platform that could revolutionize small business lending. He had the technical skills but lacked business acumen and investor connections. I saw something of myself in his hunger, his drive. I partnered with his up-and-coming fintech startup, pouring my expertise and what little capital I had into it. We worked 18-hour days, fine-tuning the product, pitching to investors, building a team of talented outsiders who had something to prove. In under 2 years, we turned it into a multi-million-dollar company, disrupting the traditional lending industry and opening doors for thousands of small entrepreneurs who had been ignored by conventional banks. The success of this venture restored my confidence and replenished my finances. More importantly, it taught me to trust again, not blindly as I had with Emily and Ryan, but cautiously, selectively, with people who proved their worth through actions rather than words. I developed a knack for reading financial patterns, making strategic acquisitions, and optimizing business models. I diversified my investments, never again putting all my faith in one venture or one person. I didn't just want to be successful, I wanted to be untouchable. By the 3rd year after my divorce, I had established a new holding company, Coleman Innovations, that invested in and guided promising startups across various sectors. I moved from the Brooklyn apartment to a loft in Tribeca, not out of a desire for luxury, but because I wanted a space that reflected my new beginning. Open, minimalist, focused on function rather than display. Every dollar I had lost in the divorce I made back tenfold. Every piece of myself that had shattered, I rebuilt stronger. The man Emily had betrayed no longer existed. In his place stood someone wiser, more resilient, and infinitely more selective about who he allowed into his life. One evening, while attending a private business gala celebrating the success of an educational technology firm we had invested in, I met Olivia Reyes, a renowned venture capitalist with a reputation as sharp as her wit. Unlike the typical VC stereotype, Olivia had built her career on backing businesses that combine profit with social impact. She approached me directly, no pretense, no small talk. "Your investment in Wong's platform was inspired," she said, her dark eyes assessing me coolly. "Though I question whether you've fully explored its potential in underserved markets." It wasn't a compliment or an insult, just an observation that cut straight to a consideration I had indeed been pondering. She wasn't just intelligent, she was fearless, a woman who had built herself from nothing. I learned later that Olivia had grown up in a small apartment in Queens, the daughter of Dominican immigrants who worked multiple jobs to make ends meet. She had put herself through NYU, then Harvard Business School, fighting every step of the way against those who underestimated her because of her gender, her ethnicity, or her background. Unlike Emily, she didn't see wealth as a defining factor. She saw resilience. She valued the struggle, understood the hunger that drove people like us to keep pushing when others would have given up. Our conversations that night weren't just about business. They were about life, growth, and the pursuit of something deeper than just financial success. We debated the ethics of AI development, the responsibility of wealth, the future of work in an increasingly automated world. "We should continue this discussion," she said as the event wound down. "I have some ideas about your educational portfolio that might interest you." We met the following week at a small, unassuming restaurant in her old neighborhood in Queens. She came dressed not in the designer outfits that Emily had favored, but in simple, elegant clothes that spoke of confidence rather than status. Over plates of mofongo and glasses of fine Dominican rum, we spent hours discussing investments, books, philosophies on life. She challenged me, pushed me to think in ways I never had before. She questioned my assumptions, disagreed with my strategies, made me defend my positions with something more substantial than charm or authority. Slowly, I felt something unfamiliar beginning to form between us. Trust. Not the naive trust of youth, but something earned through intellectual honesty and mutual respect. Over the next few months, Olivia and I began working together on select projects. Our investment styles complemented each other, my aggressive innovation balancing her measured pragmatism. We co-funded a series of educational technology startups focused on bringing quality learning tools to underserved communities. We backed sustainable energy solutions, healthcare innovations, and infrastructure projects in developing regions. My relationship with Olivia evolved into something profound, something I had never experienced before, not even with Emily. She wasn't just a business partner or a friend, she became the person I could rely on completely. There was no need for pretense or performance with her. She saw through facades, demanded authenticity, and gave the same in return. Unlike Emily, she didn't ask for proof of love through material possessions. She wanted my time, my mind, my passion. She wanted fierce debates over dinner, quiet reflections on long walks, honest assessments of our successes and failures. We didn't rush into romance. Both of us carried scars from our pasts. Mine from Emily's betrayal, hers from a marriage to a man who had tried to dim her light to make his shine brighter. When we finally did cross that line, it was with full awareness of what we were risking and what we stood to gain. "I won't be a replacement for what you lost," she told me one night as we stood on the balcony of my loft, the lights of Manhattan spread out before us. "And I won't accept anything less than what I deserve." "I wouldn't want you to be a replacement," I replied. "What I had before was a beautiful illusion. I'd rather have a challenging reality with you." Within 5 years we built a financial empire together. Coleman Reyes Partners became known not just for its impressive returns, but for its commitment to backing businesses that contributed positively to society. Olivia and I weren't just partners in business, we became partners in life. Our names were spoken in business circles with admiration, and together we redefined success on our terms. It was inevitable that paths would cross again in the relatively small world of high finance. Emily eventually became a ghost of my past, a reminder of what I had overcome. I heard through mutual connections that her marriage to Ryan had not been the fairy tale she had imagined. His old money connections had opened doors, but his investment strategies had proven less than innovative in a rapidly changing market. When she reached out again 7 years after our divorce, it wasn't the triumphant moment I might once have imagined. Her email was carefully worded, professional. She was looking for investors for a new art foundation she was launching. She had heard of Coleman Reyes Partners' interest in cultural initiatives and thought there might be a mutually beneficial opportunity. I showed the email to Olivia, who raised an eyebrow but said only, "It's your call." Out of curiosity more than anything else, I agreed to a meeting. We set it for a quiet conference room in our downtown office, neutral territory. Emily arrived precisely on time, dressed in an expensive suit that couldn't quite hide how thin she had become. Her smile was the same, but her eyes held a wariness that hadn't been there before. "Jack," she said, extending her hand formally. "Thank you for seeing me." "Emily," I replied, shaking her hand briefly. "This is my partner, Olivia Reyes." I watched as Emily assessed Olivia, taking in her quiet confidence, the intelligent warmth of her gaze, the understated elegance of her presence. I saw the moment of recognition in Emily's eyes, not jealousy exactly, but an understanding of what I had found. The meeting was cordial, professional. Emily presented her foundation's goals: supporting emerging artists from disadvantaged backgrounds, funding arts education in public schools, creating exhibition spaces in underserved communities. It was a good concept, well-researched, with clear social impact. "Why come to us?" Olivia asked directly. "There are plenty of firms that focus specifically on arts funding." Emily hesitated, then answered with unexpected honesty. "Your reputation. Both of you. For backing projects that make a difference, not just a return." She glanced at me. "And yes, I wanted to see you again, Jack. To see if you were doing well." I didn't feel anger, nor did I feel the need to show her what she had lost. She had already lost me the moment she betrayed me. What I felt instead was a strange sense of closure. "We'll consider your proposal," I said neutrally. "Our team will follow up with you next week." As she was leaving, she paused at the door. "I'm truly sorry, Jack. For everything. You deserved better." I nodded, acknowledging her apology without accepting or rejecting it. "I hope your foundation succeeds, Emily. The goals are worthy." After she left, Olivia looked at me thoughtfully. "Are you okay?" I smiled, taking her hand. "Better than okay. I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be." In the end, we did fund Emily's foundation, but through our philanthropic arm rather than as a business investment. It wasn't forgiveness exactly, some betrayals run too deep for that, but it was a recognition that good could come even from painful histories. A year later, as Olivia and I stood on the rooftop of our latest investment, an ambitious tech incubator in a formerly abandoned warehouse district that we were transforming into an innovation hub, I watched the sunset paint the city skyline in gold and thought about the journey that had brought me here. The abandoned factory buildings that were being repurposed into spaces for creators and innovators reminded me of my father, how proud he would have been to see places of labor transformed into places of opportunity. The scholarship programs we had established at universities across the country reminded me of my own struggle to access education. The mentorship initiatives we funded for young entrepreneurs from disadvantaged backgrounds were my way of reaching back to help those climbing the same steep path I had traveled. "What are you thinking about?" Olivia asked, slipping her arm through mine. "Everything that had to break for this to be built," I replied honestly. She nodded, understanding as she always did. Creation often requires destruction first. I realized something profound in that moment. The best revenge isn't proving yourself to those who doubted you. The best revenge is living a life so fulfilling that you don't even need revenge at all. And with that, I let go of my past completely. I had already won, not by defeating Emily or Ryan or anyone else who had hurt me, but by becoming someone who no longer measured success against their standards or sought validation from their approval. I had been betrayed and reborn. And in that rebirth, I had found not just success, but something far more valuable: authenticity, purpose, and love built on a foundation strong enough to weather any storm. As Olivia and I turned to greet the young entrepreneurs who were arriving for the incubator's opening celebration, I felt a deep sense of gratitude for the broken path that had led me here. Every crack had let in light. Every loss had created space for something new to grow. My name is Jack Coleman, and this is the story of how my life was torn apart, only for me to rebuild it into something I never could have imagined. Something real. Something lasting. Something mine.